Alright, I'm here to talk to you about another cameo for use with Shang Tsung. Today's video is going to be talking about Mavado. So, Mavado is an interesting cameo pick for Shang Tsung. I don't think he's excellent, but he has some cool perks. And we're going to go over all of his moves in detail, talk about what they do for Shang, how they can help out his strengths, cover his weaknesses, and grant him extra utilities. I'm going to start off today talking about Nomad's Touch, which is his back cameo. That move right there. As you can see, it has a pretty average cooldown, maybe a little bit on the slow side. And its effect is that it takes your opponent from wherever they are, and it takes you from wherever you are, and it drags you to the middle of the screen at about round start position. Which is not exactly the best position in the world for Shang. We're in range of our sweep, and we're in range of the forward 3 overhead, which are the two moves that we're the most worried about at close range. But we're well out of range of our standing 2 and our standing 1. And our standing 2 being as good of a button as it is, this is kind of a big deal. So this is not exactly our optimal range. And if our opponent backsteps just a little bit, we end up out of range of the sweep, and then we're in a serious problem. This is a bad range for Shang. So, when we meet with our opponent here, we do get up before him and have some frame advantage, so we have Oki against our opponent. But in a game with a lot of armor and other crazy wake-up options, this is not the best thing ever. Especially because Shang is better at full screen than he is at round start position. Taking our character and putting him here is worse than having our character at full screen. So, it is worth knowing, however, that this move is plus on block. As you can see right there, it was plus 10. If we used it as part of a combo, it's a summon, but it's plus 10 there. If we take a different length of block string, sometimes we get different frame data, so that one was 8. If we did it here, it'd be 10 again. If we did it off of our low, we get plus 8. And if we did it off of our 2-4 string, we get plus 9. So it's very plus on block, plus enough to go into whatever you'd like. However, it is a high. So, opponent just crouches. As you can see, he whiffs entirely. And because this is a 19 frame move and is pretty slow, lots of people are going to try to mash on this. They're going to press down 1 or down 3 or some kind of poke or jab, and they're going to win every time that they try that. And people who know what's going on and understand what Mavado is and what you're trying to do are going to neutral crouch, and then they're going to stand up for a full combo punish after you whiff. So, you can try to use it as a knowledge check to see if people know, and if they don't, you can keep using it to try to create block pressure, and if they do, or if they just try to mash, you stop. But it is risky. And you should also know that this move does damage not just to your opponent, but also to you. So when we do this, it will deal 80 damage to our opponent, 20 damage to us. So this is a way that you can die. If you press this button and you have less than 20 health, you will die. So, Mavado taking away 100 health, and then having one of his buttons also take away more health from you, is pretty rough. I kind of think that this is not a button you should touch as Shang. When your opponent blocks it, it's good. But when they make it whiff, which is very easy, or they mash on it, it fails. And when it hits, it's pretty bad. So even if your opponent let go of block, stood up, got hit by it, you would still kind of be angry that the move hit. You still would have taken damage, and being in a position you probably didn't want to be in as Shang. So, that'll take us into the next move for Shang, or for Mavado rather, which will be Just Dessert. Just Dessert is perhaps one of the most interesting moves that a Kameo has in the game, because it is essentially a push block. And what will happen is that when you press forward Kameo after flawless blocking, you will be able to spend 2 bars and half of a Kameo charge to cause Mavado to come out and kick your opponent full screen. Just like that. He does 70 damage and chucks your opponent all the way to the other side of the screen. Can't even walk back further. This move is pretty amazing. Flawless blocking is already a mechanic that's pretty heavily encouraged by the rest of the gameplay, and being able to throw your opponent full screen is exactly what Shang wants to do. The problem with this move is that it costs 2 bars of super meter, making it extremely expensive to execute. So even though it's something that Shang would like to do constantly, it's something that you'll realistically only be able to do maybe 2 times in a match. Meaning that, although it's an excellent move, it is not a very useful one. It does have armor, so if our opponent is hitting us when Just Dessert comes out after a flawless block, we will just tank the hit and Mavado will connect. And once you've flawless blocked a move in a string, you can continue to use Just Dessert for the rest of the string. You don't have to use it immediately after the hit that you flawless blocked. Just like that. And because it comes out so fast, it is essentially unblockable. Even if you wait until their last hit, nobody will have time to block after the recovery frames of their swings. And as you can see, it also has a pretty average recharge, maybe a little on the slowish side. And that's about all there is to say about it. It's a pretty simple move, and a good one, but an expensive one. The next move on the list is going to be Sliding Home. Sliding Home is a very interesting move, and has a lot of applications for a lot of characters. However, I think it is a little bit underutilized by Shang. Sliding Home is that. It is a low that can only be done when your opponent is on the ground. It can only be used while foe is knocked down, being thrown, or laying prone. So, what happens is, we do this, and this move is what you would call an OTG. It means off the ground. It means when your opponent is laying on the ground, this move will still hit them. As you can see, he's laying on the ground at the end of the combo. That move came in and hit him, even though he's normally invulnerable to all other moves. It does 60 damage, and it does 60 damage flat no matter what. It's not scaled with combos, and that's because it's not actually part of a combo. Your opponent is able to block it. So, if your opponent blocks low while lying on the ground, they will instantly stand up and block the move when it connects with them on the ground. However, this move has a ton of plus frames when it connects with them. Right there, I was plus 35. So, this puts your opponent in an awkward situation where they can either eat 60 damage and then use their get-up moves as normal, or they can block low, you get a ton of plus frames, and they no longer have any wake-up options because I'm so plus. They just have to hold whatever pressure I'm going to give them. Unfortunately, Shang's pressure is basically he can try this overhead, or he can try this low. And both of these are reactable, but the overhead is so slow that reacting to it is not a challenge for anybody. Which means that Shang just doesn't have the best Oki pressure in the world. So getting more Oki pressure from close range is not usually what Shang wants to do. And because a lot of his combo enders send the opponent full screen, this move also runs into another problem, which is that it doesn't quite go full screen. It just barely goes a little less than full screen. And because that's where Shang likes to put people, he gets a lot fewer opportunities to use this unless he alters his combo routes to deal less damage and keep the opponent close. And even then, he's not getting the best mix-ups in the world as his opponent wakes up. The next move for Mavado is going to be best feet forward and nin drop, which I'm going to classify as basically the same move. They're both combo extenders, and they can both only be used as combo extenders. As you can see, it says can only be used while foe is vulnerable to a juggle combo. Same thing on best feet forward. So here is nin drop. Just like that. Mavado comes in from above, smacks your opponent into the ground to get a juggle. And best feet forward. He comes in from behind your opponent and pushes your opponent towards you. Just like that. Both of them deal the same amount of damage, and both of them have a unique gravity where the move will not be affected by gravity scaling. Gravity scaling still exists, and the rest of your subsequent moves still will, but much like Ground Skull, the move itself has its own gravity. It ignores what the rest of your gravity scaling looks like on the combo. So this can be used to get in a cheeky final hit on a lot of combos with almost every character. And for Shang, it has a unique utility, which is that both of these can form Form Stealer combos. Nin drop is the easiest, as you might imagine, because it keeps your opponent close to you. Just like that. And you can create some pretty excellent and easy to do Form Stealer combos. So with any character that your opponent's playing, you're going to be able to find a nin drop route to make a Form Stealer combo. If you could use nin drop, you could probably use best feet forward in most scenarios too. But nin drop puts your opponent higher in the air, where best feet forward just puts them closer to you. So you're going to decide which one you want to do based on which of those things is more important. There are a couple of things for Shang specifically that become unique to one move or the other. For instance, nin drop is good at creating combos off of 1, 2, 4, which is something that Shang normally can't combo off of. So we could do 1, 2, 4. Into skull loops, which we normally aren't able to do. And we could also do it with best feet forward. It's just a little easier with nin drop. It's not super important which one you choose. However, these moves also have another property, which is because they only come out when your opponent is juggled, they become a sort of option select. Which is that if you press the Kameo button, when your opponent is blocking, nothing happens. See, I just pressed nin drop there, and because my opponent wasn't juggled, all that happened was 2-4, and now I can go into my short block string there. I can use my pressure from 2-4 without having to commit to 2-4 into ground skull to get a combo like I normally would there. Or I could use 1-2-4, and because my opponent didn't get hit by any of those moves, he didn't have the Kameo come out. The same is true of best feet forward, as you can see. So these form option selects where if your opponent gets hit, you get the combo, and if they don't get hit, you don't waste the Kameo, and you have whatever frame data you normally have from the string you chose. So, if my opponent did get hit, there we go. We get our combo off of 2-4. And if our opponent doesn't get hit, then we don't have to worry about it. Now, best feet forward also has an application in Shang zoning that nin drop is less useful for, which is that you can make ground skull combos with it. And in fact, you can make ones that are significantly better than the ground skull combos you would make when using meter to do the same thing. So normally a ground skull combo would look something like this. You get 227 damage, and you had to spend 1 bar of meter. With Mavado, you can do a lot better than that without spending any meter. You can actually do the inputs properly. I cannot. As you can see, we're at 257, and that was not using a proper ender. That was to keep your opponent close. We use a proper ender, we go up to 282. And we spent no meter for that. The same can be done with min drop. The issue is just that because it doesn't move our opponent towards us, we end up just having to use more ground skulls at the maximum distance, so we end up with less damage, but it is unbreakable, because ground skulls are unbreakable. And we never need to do the kicks. The other application that these have for Shang in particular is that we can now convert off of our armored moves. As you can see, we could go into even actual combo routes off of our armor. So spinning spikes and our armored claw there both lead into skull loops now, which they did not before, and it's often difficult to find a Kameo that will make that work, but because of the unique properties of best feet forward pushing your opponent into you, you can make it work now. Keep in mind that when you enhance these moves and give them armor, they have much more severe damage scaling, so your combo will actually end up doing less damage if you enhanced the claws than it would if you just did the combo without enhancing the claws. That's what happens when you don't EX the claws, and when you do EX the claws, you get significantly less. 253 instead of 320 something. And the only real reason you're ever going to try to combo off of these is because they are armored. So you're going to end up with mid to high 200s combo off of an armored move when you press Mavado, and if your opponent blocks, Mavado won't come out and you won't waste the Kameo charge. You will, however, still be vulnerable because your armored move will still be punishable. Using Nindrop to convert off of armor is not possible, however. So, that leaves just Mavado's final move here, which is Trap Drop. Trap Drop is his neutral Kameo. As you can see, it is a trap that costs our entire Kameo meter. It drags our opponent into it when they're outside of it. It puts them in an extremely long capture state when it hits, and it has a pretty average cooldown. But because it takes the whole Kameo meter, it feels pretty long. This move is also an ambush. We can move around and do whatever we want while it's coming out, which means that we can use it to make block strings. We could do something like this. And that would create a frame trap. However, this is not the best frame trap in the world, largely because the trap takes a long time to fire, and it has a sort of short block stun compared to a lot of ambush Kameos. It has a very long hit stun, but a sort of short block stun. One unique application for Shang, though, is that we can pretty much do whatever we want in terms of form stealing after this trap hits. Got all the time in the world. So, if you're ever wanting to end a combo with a form steal, the answer is that you can use the trap drop. And because it's very active, as you can see, it just hangs out on the screen for a really long time once you call it, and it has a really big hitbox. You can basically just toss this into combos, and as you can see, we can capture our opponent and do whatever we want. It does not restand your opponent. In fact, if it hits a standing opponent, they are now airborne, but it does have a really long capture state that ignores gravity for the length of the animation. So it's not like you can just start your combo all over again, but you could definitely turn into your opponent and use their ender, if it suits you. And of course, if it hits during a frame trap, you can now just do anything you want. You can go through Shang's combo routes with skull loops, or you could go into your opponent's combo route after juggling an opponent. Either one will work beautifully and be very easy to perform. You have all the time in the world. So the move is really, really good. It has a large hitbox. It sucks people in. It has a great capture animation. It can also be used in a more traditional trap sense, which is that you can use it to keep your opponent out while you zone them. If you have your trap sitting directly in front of you as you're firing off skulls, or you're using ground skulls trying to keep your opponent at bay, you can instead put the trap right in front of them, and now if he gets hit by a ground skull, he might bounce into the trap and be in a really, really bad situation. You know, like if I'm doing this, that's awful news for my opponent. It doesn't last forever, and it's expensive to do, but if you think that your zoning is going to lock the round for you, then this trap can make sure that your opponent can't get in a traditional way. They need a teleport or a fly or something in order to avoid the trap and actually close the gap without getting hurt. Now, this move also provides a throw combo for most of the cast, but not for Shang. Pretty much no matter when we press this for Shang, we are not getting a throw combo. There is no timing at which it's going to work. Even there, we can get pressure off of our throw with it, but we cannot get an actual combo. However, if we're playing as our opponent, we can pretty much always get a throw combo. Almost every member of the cast gets a throw combo. Shang is basically unique in not getting a throw combo off of Mavado's trap, which is bad for Shang, but when you form steal somebody else, you can pretty much guarantee that you now have access to throw combos. It also does a ton of chip damage, which helps make it useful for pressure. Johnny's at 1,000 right now. Let's see what happens. He lost about 40. He lost 42.5 hit points from just the trap. Combine that with Shang's own pressure, and we have a pretty useful pressure tool that can make our opponent eat a lot of damage. Also, a decent chunk of that chip damage is not true chip damage. It is registered as unblockable hits. And that means that even if our opponent flawless blocks, they're going to be taking some chip damage from this. See, there were 3 unblockables in there, so 30 damage of that. There's nothing that your opponent can do about it. And because they're getting sucked into it as well, there's almost no circumstance in which they're going to avoid that damage when the trap comes out during pressure. So, I think that covers all of Mavado's moves. They are all useful for some people, but a little bit underwhelming for Shang. Particularly Nomad's Touch is just not a good move at all for Shang. And the combo extenders are the sort of thing that Shang doesn't really need because he already does high combo damage on his own. But they do give easy access to Form Stealer. However, almost every Kameo in the game gives easy access to Form Stealer. Mavado is just extra easy, much like Sub-Zero or Frost. So, sliding home is also normally a very, very good move, but for Shang, who is often leaving his opponents at full screen, it suddenly becomes sort of underwhelming. It's incredibly good on characters like Havoc, who could use his tether and then use the OTG slide to force you to block, and then once you block, he activates the tether, and the tether gives him a free combo. Or you just have to take 60 extra damage from the slide and then have normal wake up trying to fight the tether, which is already a little bit tricky. So, for somebody like Havoc, it's amazing. For lots of characters, somebody like Johnny, it's amazing, who already has really strong pressure and can now use this Oki game where you can't armor, because the OTG, when you block it, means that you can't armor, and if you take the damage, you're just taking an extra 6% on top of a normal combo every single time. But for Shang, we can't make our opponent hold the OTG. So overall, I think that Mavado is a decent Kameo for Shang, but he's not ideal. He gives us cool combo routes, some minor buffs to our zoning. from the trap and the best feet forward move. He has a near useless gap closer move, and his push block is so expensive that even though it's one of the best moves a Kameo could give Shang, it is not something that we can rely on or pick a Kameo because of. We're just not going to spend that meter every opportunity. When we steal other people's forms, we get access to throw combos, which is nice. And we have option selects off of our basic strings, which are not amazing, but they are better than wasting Kameos on moves that might not work. For instance, if you were using Kano knives to try to make 1-2-4 combos, you would have to use the Kano knives before you know if 1-2-4 had actually hit your opponent and hope that they got hit. Otherwise, the knives were sort of a useless Kameo use. But not with Mavado. You can just press the button, and if they get hit, then the combo happens, and if they don't, nothing happens. Giving us access to combos off of our armored moves is also uniquely good. It's something that really I don't think any other Kameo in the roster can say for Shang. Except for maybe Scorpion. I'm pretty sure Scorpion gives us combos off of our armor as well. But Mavado, I think, is better overall than Scorpion. So, it's something to think about. He doesn't really give us access to any way to break armor, though, during our pressure. Often, what's going to happen is that you're going to do spinning spikes, and then before the mine hits your opponent, they're going to use armor. And then, when they do that, they're just going to get hit by the mine, and it won't do the capture state, and their armor will hit you. And because you're already low on health, that's going to be extra bad for you. So Mavado's pressure doesn't really cover one of the common issues that Shang faces during his pressure. And those are my thoughts on Mavado. I think if you want to make him work, you probably can, but I would not recommend him as one of the optimal Kameos for Shang Tsung. I appreciate all of the people who took the time to watch, and if you give a like, comment, and subscribe, it'll help out the channel a ton. And I'll see you in the next one.